ERP was built for stability, but business today runs on change. So the question is, are we trying to force modern businesses into systems that were never designed for the world we operate in today? Welcome back to the ERP Perspective, where we challenge the status quo and bring you real conversations from people shaping the future of enterprise technology. I'm your host, George Collier, and today we're diving into one of the biggest tensions in ERP right now: control versus change. Because while businesses are evolving faster than ever, new revenue models, global operations, increasing complexity, most ERP systems are becoming more rigid over time. And when that happens, companies don't evolve their ERP, they work around it. But what's the real cost of that? And why do so many organizations find themselves stuck in a cycle of re-implementation every few years? Today, I'm joined by someone who's not just talking about these challenges, but actively building what the next generation of ERP could look like. Sandeep Chopra, co-founder of Everest Systems, an AI-native ERP designed to evolve with the business without compromising control, governance, or financial integrity. In this episode, we're going to break down why ERP struggles with change, the hidden cost of making ERP work, and what an ERP built for continuous evolution actually looks like. Sandeep, welcome to the ERP Perspective.
Well, it's great to be here, George. Thank you for having me.
No problem at all. I know I've been speaking for a couple of weeks regarding the topic of this episode and learning more about Everest Systems and obviously your background. I've already done sort of a slight introduction to the episode today, but I thought it'd be good to hear it, from yourself, your background within the ERP industry, what brought you up to present day, and obviously being a co-founder of Everest Systems.
Yeah, my story is a diverse one. I started my career in management consulting at Deloitte, which is, as you know, the largest professional services company in the world. But I was in a new practice area, which was at the time, this is about 20 years ago, called security and privacy. And the big four in particular, the accounting firms, were really interested in figuring out what services they could provide post Sarbanes-Oxley, post all the data privacy, data regulations being passed around the world, Europe leading the way really in terms of data privacy, to see how they could help companies come up with security privacy strategies to deal with the data they were collecting on customers and employees. And while you might think of Deloitte as, of course, it is an accounting firm, at the end of the day, a lot of the business value they provide to these companies is the knowledge of the industries and the business processes that you have. So in order to provide security and privacy strategy, we were really analyzing how business processes worked around data in financial services, in manufacturing, in technology, and other industries. So that's where I started my career. I went on from there to do product leadership roles in startups in the data and governance space, and ended up running one of the product lines at a company called Veeva Systems, which is one of the more successful cloud-based companies of the last 20, 25 years. And Veeva really provides industry-specific kind of mission-critical business applications for the life sciences industry. So there's applications span clinical trials, manufacturing, regulatory submissions to the FDA and other regulatory bodies around the world, and CRM. In fact, the only application area that Veeva doesn't do that's strategic to the life sciences industry is ERP. They do all of the others. And so that experience led me to be at a company that was really providing the full stack of technology services, software, services, and data to help really craft new business processes in this cloud era. That was 2019, and when I left Veeva, I went on to become an entrepreneur in residence at a venture firm called Sutter Hill Ventures that is famous in Silicon Valley for helping incubate some of the largest B2B software companies in the last 20, 25 years. And it was there I met my co-founder and started on the Everest journey.
Fantastic. And that was about 6, 7 years ago now.
6 years ago, right, in 2020, we met, right before the start of the pandemic.
Fantastic. And how was the relationship with your co-founder and, that journey over the last...
Well, we are a global company from the start, which is unusual. My co-founder is a famous technologist from SAP and started SAP HANA and many of their other big technology initiatives. So, our main R&D site is Heidelberg in Germany, and our main, North America site is here in Mountain View, where I am right now. And so we learned to build a company during the pandemic and together remotely. Hadn't worked before. And so you might think that might be a recipe for disaster for many companies. But actually that's been the strongest part of the company, believe it or not. And the why is, always interesting. And the why, I think more than anything has to do with values. So the things that good companies do really well in similar industries are the same, regardless of whether they're European or American or Asian, right? Is in this space in business software, what good companies do really well is they build a lot of trust with executives. They build a lot of reputation for doing hard problems well over and over again, providing the stability so that businesses can run on their software. And I think both SAP and Viva have done that really well in the last 20 or 50 years. If you look at the heart of the problem we're trying to solve in ERP today, I think in this AI native era of ERP, I think there are a few big problems, right? Like what is fundamentally different about the business world today than 20, 25 years ago is I think businesses are innovating faster on their business model than ever before, right? We moved from kind of 1990s style manufacturing to early subscription SaaS about 20 years ago. That's when that movement started. And then it became more consumption and usage, and now it's becoming more outcome based with AI. But what is really behind the scenes is companies are able to launch software products, but now in the future as well, hardware products faster than ever before, right? And so the burden in a lot of ways is shifting from being able to just manage your supply chain and manage the costs to how fast you can get customer traction with new products and experiment correctly with your business models. And all that change has to get modeled in your ERP. That's where your products live. That's where your invoicing lives, your rev rec lives, how you run your company, how the people that you're allocating all lives over there. And so we think this AI world demands a fundamentally new kind of system that is
Mhm.
really good at making fast, agile changes in the system, but it still provides you rock solid guarantees that your financials and your operations are going to run properly. And so I think the balance of the both, providing the balance of those guarantees along with the innovation and the change management is, I think, what's going to drive this new age of AI ERP.
100%. 100%. And an analogy that we had Eric Kimbling on very recently,
Right.
and he was saying, technology at the moment with AI within the ERP space, it's like a hockey stick, with sort of the AI coming into the industry, and how businesses adapt to this traditionally has been sort of a diagonal, a much slower progression. But I'm guessing obviously with the initiatives from Everest Systems and how you help businesses stay modern but keep up with the latest technology and get
Yeah.
most of what the industry is currently experiencing.
Absolutely. And I think this pace will not change. I think what is out in the industry today is people are thinking, you know what, in this AI world, do I, e- let's ask the real hard question. Do I even need an ERP anymore?
Mm,
Why can't I just build everything with Claude and other AI tools? And I think and the reality is, it's not just today. Every major shift of technology, people have always asked themselves the question of whether they can build it on their own or buy something. Right? It happened in the cloud era. It happened in the on-prem era as well. So I think it's natural that people are thinking about using the latest tools to be able to do that. And I think some companies will do that. But I think the for the vast majority of companies out there, right, that are focused on running their business and not in building systems, what they're going to realize is in this world of AI, we can move really fast. We can analyze things fast. We can guess outcomes. We can change business models. All that's wonderful. But you still need a rock solid foundation that is consistent in your financials, that is auditable, that is maintained. And that cost of providing those guarantees and that maintenance over years and years, that is where 80 or 90% of that money gets spent, right?
mhm.
So do you want to spend that money custom building and maintaining that forever? Or do you want to rely on a software provider that's using the native AI technology, but building a new age platform that can maintain all those rules, give you the guardrails so you can build your business faster?
I think that perfectly sort of aligns with the topic of discussion today. ERP was built for stability, but business runs on change. And I think that sort of is you're a great person to interview about this topic and talk about what you're seeing within the current ecosystem. I mean, do you think the core design principles of traditional ERP systems are fundamentally misaligned with how modern businesses actually operate today?
I think this is why it's not that ERP doesn't need to exist, but I think a new kind of ERP platform needs to exist because the purpose of an ERP was always to run your business processes in a standard way, right? if you run it in a standard way, meaning you follow the best practices of a vendor like an SAP, for example, right? You are able to focus on running your business by following the best practices of the industry. I think that provided you stability, but it was also rigid, right? The
Mhm.
world that we're moving to now in the future is, what if you could have it both ways? You could get the guarantees from the software provider that it's going to work. Your financials will close properly. You'll be able to pass audits. However, what if you could truly personalize that ERP to your needs, exactly how your business works, very rapidly, right? Now, your business does not need to be personalized in every process in every way, but in some ways it does. The products that you sell are personal. Maybe the supply chain, exactly how your production planning process works, is somewhat personal, but your accounting is not always personal. It's following rules. Okay.
Mhm.
So I think there's always this mix and match of what is standardized versus what is custom. And I think that's the magic going forward. AI is able to help you build what is custom so rapidly if the platform that you select is the right one.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, do you think it's that mix and match, or I mean, why do ERP systems tend to become more rigid over time? And what happens inside those organizations when the system can't evolve as fast as the businesses?
Well, I think what happens is the foundation of ERP, the core of it, which starts within, as you probably know, within accounting and financials, regardless of whether you're SAP or NetSuite or Oracle, right? That needs to be rock solid. Otherwise, you've got your business wrong. However, things around it are changing. Those are the business processes, right? Your order management's changing. You acquire a company that's going to change your product mix. Now your supply chain is changing. So all those the reality is that change is always happening. When the ERPs are not able to keep up with being able to make those changes faster, what do people do? Well, they have to make the change. That's business.
Mm,
Business has to move, right? So what do? They buy point solutions for subscription billing, consumption billing. They buy point solutions for cloud costs. They buy point solutions for demand planning, right? And then they buy all these point solutions, then they integrate them, right, to the ERP because it has to talk to your financials, obviously, and your people. Otherwise, it doesn't work at all, right? And then they put spreadsheets and duct tapes and workaround, and now you've got this kind of mess, okay? But this mess is a required mess because without it, your business cannot run. So I think what really we're saying now is, you know what? You still need that ERP foundation, right? You still need the accounting, you need the understanding of your people and your vendors. All those data primitives still need to exist in the system. In addition, you need a technology platform that can help you make changes inside the ERP faster.
mm.
And that's the difference. If ERP could have done it, I don't think you would have seen this fragmentation in the first place. It's because ERP couldn't do it is why you had that fragmentation.
I mean, I know apart from the obvious of the business not running, but what are those long-term consequences of forcing ERP systems to adapt through workarounds rather than evolving the system itself?
You know, it's always the short term versus the long term, right? Like, so if your boss comes to you and says, we're trying out this usage based model, and you say like, well, I'm going to take like 3 years to build that into my ERP, or I can stand up a standalone solution in 6 months to a year and then integrate it to my ERP another 6 months. That's half the time. If you want to keep your job and you want to keep your company moving, you probably know what outcome you're going to choose. So that seems to work, right? You make a bunch of those point decisions one after the other. But then let's just say 3 years later, you acquire a company or you make significant product changes, right? Now you're a multi-product company, or you're going from a usage-based model to an outcome-based model, for example, right?
Mm,
Now, guess what? Now you got to make those changes to not one system, to 5, 6, 8 systems.
mm,
And at that point, you're so handcuffed,
mm,
you basically cannot move your company anymore because you're tied to this
mm,
duct tape of integrations and workarounds and this mess that you've kind of built along the way. And I think that is the promise of this new AI native platform technology, is that you're actually able to make those model changes to your business model changes, acquisitions, and so on, so much faster that you
mm.
don't have to rely on a plethora of solutions to be able to do it.
So I mean, some, as you mentioned, that some of it sounds like some of the consequences are becoming more rigid, not being able to be as flexible within the industry that you operate within, and essentially being left behind and not being as competitive as maybe other businesses within that space.
Not being as competitive, not being able to go public. If that new business model change requires you to go from, if that's what's the strategy is that's going to take you from being a $200 million company to $1 billion company, right? And if it takes you 3 years to implement, you may never have that time.
I mean, why do so many companies end up replacing their ERP every few years? And is this a failure of the technology not, keeping up to date, or the architecture, or even the mindset of that organization?
Yeah, I don't think an ERP change is historically something the companies want to make every few years. In fact, they try to avoid making it, right? That's why they buy so many of these point solutions. But I think the root cause of why companies don't want to make this change is because the change management is so brutal. They're doing full-time jobs. Doing the ERP is another full-time job. And so people just don't, they don't want to put their careers always at risk by being able to pull off these big changes. And that transition has not been made easier by previous software providers, right? If you could make that change management easier and that journey more palatable in terms of time and resourcing and just the speed at which you're implementing those changes, I think people would be in a position to be able to evolve their ERPs a lot faster. And I think actually it would increase the longevity of your ERP, meaning instead of a few years, it should really be a decade or longer.
So, I mean, our sort of technology architecture and mindset, it sounds like quite a lot of it is, the mindset of the business as well. People
100%.
being fearful, people not wanting to maybe put their all into, that change, or maybe making suggestions where they think, look, I don't want to say if it's wrong, or I don't want to put my job at risk. Some people might even think that their job would be at risk if they give the wrong advice or the wrong sort of input.
I think mindset, ultimately this is a people business. So I think you have to start with mindset. The business it's business software, right? If the technology is there to serve the changing needs of the business, I do think it starts with mindset, but I do think technology has a huge role to play in it, because if the enabling technology has been given to the business, the reality is it makes that mindset possible. So I think like a big part of the investment, for example, at Everest that we made early on, the first big thing we worked on beyond modern business processes for consumption and subscription and all these order management things, and as well as on cloud costs and people costs, was to say, okay, that's all business process. That's the way to run a modern company. Everyone knows it, right? Everyone goes global really fast now compared to 30 years ago. Everyone has multiple products. People want to experiment fast and change products, and they want to manage all those changes. Okay, but that's business process. On the other side, though, like what is the big thing that you can do as a company to provide enabling technology? And for us, we invented this technology called this live sandbox. And what is that really saying? It's saying, anytime a business makes changes, right? They want to launch a new product, acquire a company, understand its costing model from people and cloud costs. What do they have to do? They launch a new business process. They get a bunch of people together. They diagram it out. They make a bunch of changes on spreadsheets. They proof of concept it. Then once it passes that, then they go into the ERP. Then they do it in development environment. They can do some custom code. Then they do some testing. Then they launch it. That's the process, right? To get it right. Well, what if you could do that process in a system instead of always in rooms and tons of meetings and tons of iterations? You will still need the people collaboration, don't get me wrong, but can you enable that process and that collaboration better, right? And that's what this technology really enables, which is, can you go test changes before you make them, but with real data in a production environment, right? So you never need a dev environment and a UAT environment and a test environment. Like you don't need 10 environments, you need one ever, right? You're always in production, but somehow magically you have stability and guardrails, but you can also make changes simultaneously, right? It sounds like an oxymoron, but that is resolving that contradiction is what we aim to do. And then now in the age of AI, what we're saying is, you know what? It's not just about being able to test and try new outcomes. Now everyone has the power of being a developer through prompts, right? That's what everyone's seeing in things like Claude Code and Cowork. But what if that power is available so you can build it in the ERP way inside the system? Meaning, can you launch a treasury management process? Can you launch a new product with its billing structure and revenue structure? But again, inside the confines of an ERP, right? So you're getting the guardrails, the auditability, and the stability for free because it's being managed for you. What that effectively is, by the way, is just saying there's a new way for people to build requirements for their business solutions and launch those requirements inside an ERP system. as opposed to doing outside the systems.
So essentially, a business can run as many simulations as they
Yes.
need to, risk free.
Risk-free simulations, risk-free product development. You
Mm,
can launch new applications, right? You can build new applications from scratch and launch them. For
mm,
example, let's just say you bought a company in Asia, right? And
mhm,
that company runs a totally different business process than the rest of your company. This is back to my point about standard versus custom, right? Now, you could take 2 years to integrate this company and say, you know what? They must standardize to my business process. Or you could say, you know, I bought this company for a reason. It's growing fast. It's doing a lot of great things too. I want it in my ERP, but I'm comfortable them doing things their own way. The way
mm,
the products they launched, the pricing structures they used, right? The cloud costs that they have, the AI costs they have, because that's the reason I bought them. So can
mhm,
I go integrate this new company rapidly into my system? Not just the accounting. I'm talking about the business processes on top of the accounting too, right? How can I launch a new product portal? How can I then set up the billing and the revenue? Can I just run this process 10 times faster than I could before? And
mm.
that's what the tool enables.
Fantastic. I mean, to one of our early episodes, we had Judith O'Callaghan on, and she was telling me the same. She said these businesses, we don't want to take away their unique factors that are winning business. You know, we want to keep that there because that's
Yeah.
what's made you successful. That's what's got your business to where it is. So we don't want
Yeah.
to take that positive, unique things that that business does away. And but like you said, if you're acquiring another business, you just standards that or putting that into your ERP system and taking maybe that unique approach away, it might affect that acquisition and it might not be as successful as you thought it would be by just acquiring and having it forced to fit to your processes, how your business operates and things like that. So I think it is good to have that flexibility and have a look at them simulations to see how that would work.
It's really the best of both worlds, right? Like in one world, what people are doing when they acquire a company, for example, is they'll
Mm,
say, I want to integrate that into my standard business process. That's a massive migration. In other case, they might say, I'm going to keep their ERP totally separate. Like it's like I'm a holding company. I'm just going to run it like
mm,
a separate company, right? Now they
mm,
both have pros and cons, right?
right.
We're saying there's a third option, which is you can actually integrate them a lot faster, but still give them the personalization, the customization they want to run their business. So you can have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it's sort of a strange analogy, but Elon Musk, for example, he does thousands of simulations before they do a rocket launch or anything like that. Thousands of simulations. So why would a business who's going through this massive change just sort of guess how this would work? If you've got the ability now to simulate how these new processes will work, how your business will operate in the next 5 to 10 years, why
Yeah.
not take that opportunity to see or simulate without any risk and how your business will run?
100%. Absolutely. You know, I think people think of planning as such a separate discipline, and it is a separate discipline. Don't get me wrong, a certain kind of financial planning, a headcount planning, and sales planning, and so on. But there is just a lot of work that people do that is what if work all the
Mm,
time when they run their business. They just happen to do it on spreadsheets and a bunch of tools. We're just saying the best tool in the world to do that work is actually your ERP. It is your system of record. Like that is where your high
mm,
integrity data lives. We know what kills our what if scenarios. Every person says garbage in, garbage out, right? Well,
mm,
hopefully your ERP is not garbage in. So then if you're able to run it inside your ERP, you're probably getting the best results possible.
I mean, if ERP were designed today from first principles with continuous change as the default, what would fundamentally need to be different in how it's built and governed?
Yeah, so we talked about some of the principles, right? Like it
Yeah.
is that you can generate and build new functionality using AI. You can test that functionality with real production data, but in a safe, secure, isolated way, so it doesn't wreck your real data because you still got to run your business, right? Like it's like you're building the plane and flying it too. You still got to fly the plane, otherwise you're gonna have a messed up business. You cannot afford it. It's high data integrity. And then I think beyond some of these core technologies, you've got to have the ability to be able to publish changes inside your system so you have guarantees that the changes that you make in this what if mode
Mhm,
actually will work when you mix it in the real world, right? And so the system has to provide a bunch of technology underneath, like a bunch of services like versioning of data, just like you version Google Docs before you upgrade the
mhm,
latest version of Google Docs that could replace Microsoft Word. There's a lot of underlying technology services that have to be provided to make sure that the changes that you're trying out, the new applications you're building will actually work. once you push them into the production area.
I mean, I know we've kind of touched quite a lot of these topics, but is there any other ways how, Everest Systems sort of enable continuous change, inside the ERP? Especially, I know we mentioned with simulations, sandbox sort of approach, but with sort of AI and with mainly without losing the governance control and obviously the financial integrity as well of the business.
Yeah, I think the real power of AI, if you really look at it, at the core of it, it is giving you a bunch of probabilistic outcomes that are generated, right? And so what we've really said is like AI is not deterministic. It's not becoming deterministic. It's not the nature of it, right? That's actually what makes it good. It's generative. Those probabilities at which they're generating all those options are going to get better and better over time as the models, as the core foundational models get better. Our way of incorporating those changes is going to get better and better. So what we've launched is a completely new product in the last year called AI Specify, which is for us the new way to be able to build new functionality in the system. So think of it like you are, as an accountant, as a financial person, as an operations manufacturing person, you're ERP user, you are for the first time have the powers of being a software product manager and a developer and a QA person and designer. So all the roles of a software process AI is giving you. It's giving you an AI product manager, developer, designer, and QA person, okay, to the power of a business user that doesn't need to know how to code. And with that power that you have as a business user, you can then define your capabilities that you want for new applications, new functionality. You can describe it in words. You can have AI describe it for you. You can correct what AI does to make it real. And then we build the applications for you. So we provide the development behind the scenes. Again, we meaning AI incorporated into our system provides it for you. So then you can see that those concepts that you generated, those requirements that you have in mind for your business, how are they being modeled and being coming to life in AI? And we can do it at a much more rapid clip than you ever could before. Right?
Yeah.
You could do the same process without AI, of course, right? You could go hire a product manager and a developer and a QA person, and you could do all those things. But now you have the power AI to help you assist. And by the way, that as a business person gives you a ton of power, right? Because you ultimately know what your business needs. And so that with that power in your hands, you can test out these various outcomes and then launch the right ones for your business.
Right. So, I mean, looking at with AI within the ERP industry or business as a whole, you've got these AI agents now being introduced to businesses. You have, I'm sure you've seen OpenClaw as well. Sort of as a separate AI service. But do you think that's now going to be are we going to see this year an influx of AI agents? Services like OpenClaw, for example, to automate those job or those role responsibilities you just mentioned.
I think that's for sure where AI is just going to get more and more pervasive, right? It started with chat and now it's more task and workflow automation. We're talking about AI to build full applications and full software capabilities. I think ultimately the technology is only going to get more mature, and I think the productization of that technology that we are doing, other people are doing, is only going to get more mature. I think what it's going to do as an effect, though, is it's going to make the business user that is more thoughtful about technology more powerful. Because again, what AI cannot do is it is not there to run your business to figure out the outcome. It is there to kind of take your lead so that you, if you know what you want for your business and you know your why, it can generate good solution options for you.
Some really good ideas there to think about on how this is going to evolve the industry and sort of change over the next 12, even the next 12 months. I think there's going to be a lot of change with
100%.
AI and how these different ERP systems evolve with changes, but also the businesses that you guys assist. I
I
mean,
don't think, the change isn't just the good thing about this change is it's not just to software companies and AI companies. This change is coming. That's what I mean. This change is coming to all industries, right? Because they're powerful knowledge workers that are probably frustrated with the pace of change, right? Of how fast their business they know the right thing to do. They know how the planning process should work. They know how to launch the products correctly. They know what the business model should be. Now they need to iterate fast, but they're constrained by what? By their systems, by the pace of technology, by the people they need to be able to hire to pull off the project, and the budget they need. So I think what we're really reducing here dramatically is the total time and the cost that it takes to launch new business ideas that can be modeled into software.
100%, 100%. I think those who really utilize the skills that we can be given by AI will see the benefits. I mean, Sam Altman, owner of OpenAI, he predicts, AI will make the first single valued business, which is one person, $1 billion market value, which 5 years ago, a couple of years ago, you would have thought that would be insane. But for someone to say that now, it's very possible. It's very possible. I'm not sure it's been achieved yet. I think I saw an article a couple of weeks ago that someone was very close to achieving a $1 billion market cap business through just using AI and one single person with these AI agents and things like that. And yeah, I think we're going to see so much change over the next couple of months and years.
I think there's many ends of the spectrum. I think that's one end of the spectrum, right? Where maybe you're solving something so specific that one person can maybe solve that problem at scale with AI. I think, we look at it because we're looking at not necessarily one person companies, right? We're looking at companies that have hundreds, thousands of people. We look at it from a lens which is complementary but different, which is, how can those hundreds of people or thousands of people be much, much more productive? And how can they help make the business more productive? Because what they still need is the collaboration. These ideas, if you want to launch a product at a company that's 1,000 people, it's still not that easy, right? It's like you have to go convince people, you have to model out the scenarios. You're trying to not launch a new business. You have to make sure that the new business is going to work with the existing business, right? How would it change the existing customers too? Your businesses can't be growing like this all the time. They have to grow like this to be a steady business. And so we think that there's going to be benefits on all sides, but there's going to be a huge benefit because people can run leaner teams to accomplish bigger things for the totality of their business. But what they need is a different set of tools, right? They're going to need tools. While you could use a chat tool for like your single threaded work, you're going to need a collaboration environment like AI Specify to be able to brainstorm requirements, figure them out, launch them, get them tested by your team so you can influence and convince the people at your company, including the CEO, that this is the right decision for the company's future. So I don't think that people element goes away at all, to be honest with you. In fact, it gets exacerbated in some ways because you've got to get the people together faster. And I think AI can actually give you the tools to get the people together faster.
So, I mean, if you were advising one of these businesses, they've got big teams, they've got a lot of ERP consultants working at an organization, and you're advising a CFO or a CIO, this week, you had a meeting with them. What's the biggest assumption they need to challenge about ERP before they start to invest into their next system?
I think the biggest thing that people are worried about is they're going to um, break something in their core system of record that their business runs on, which I think is the right fear. And I guess I'd say two things to that. One is I think look carefully at your partners and what foundation you're building your ERP on. Is it the right foundation for a business being built in 2026 or not? Right. And the second thing I'd say is you don't have to change your ERP to experiment with these tools, right? You can be experimenting around the ERP. So we have customers and some larger ones that have some of the largest ERP systems in the world. You can imagine organizations like that are not going to want to change their ERP regardless of what someone's saying in a certain environment. They're going to take their time. But what they are able to do and trying out is how can they change systems around their ERP that are built using AI native technology, a customer onboarding process, right? Even a production planning process, right? Oh my gosh, but these processes for new products, you can start learning to build with AI. And I think what you'll realize is once you start getting comfortable with what's possible, it's still going to need people, right? It's still going to need people to help collaborate and make decisions. The people are not going away fundamentally. The people will become more productive. So you'll be able to do more with the same people.
So obviously, ERP was built for stability, but as we both know, business runs on change. And yeah, thank you so much for obviously coming on to the show. I'll link obviously your profile below this video. So anybody watching, please do follow Sandeep and check out what Everest Systems are building. I'm sure there'll be an article around AI Specify as well. Anybody interested in that product or service as well, please do check that out. And is there anything else, Sandeep, you'd like to give to the audience today, or the viewers watching regarding Everest Systems or your future plans?
Well, I think in terms of Everest, yeah, no, we're continuing to grow, mid-market to enterprise customers across industries. And for us in particular, a lot of times now the AI conversation is sometimes with ERP and sometimes without ERP, if that makes sense. So I think that's what we're seeing from our customers. We're seeing, of course, AI is part of the ERP story, but there's also customers that are not yet ready to change their ERP, and they're still adopting the AI technology that we're providing kind of independent of that.
Fantastic. It's great to have you on the show, Sandeep. And yeah, I'm sure we've got future conversations to have as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for having me, George.